For 34 years, I was the girl who stayed. I watched my sisters pack their bags, put on white dresses, and drive away. I held their babies, I organized their weddings, and I smiled through the questions. When is it your turn, Jana? Why are you still here, Jana? I used to wonder if God had forgotten my address. But he hadn't. He was just preparing me for a different kind of story. Today, I'm closing the door to the room I shared with my sisters for 3 decades. I'm saying goodbye to the garden I planted, the kitchen where I cooked thousands of meals, and the title of the Cinderella Duggar. Come with me as I drive away from the big house for the very last time. I'm taking you inside my new life in Nebraska, the quiet love I found with Stephen, and the beautiful, terrifying freedom of finally starting over. My name is Jana, and this is my new chapter. They called me the Cinderella of the family. I saw the headlines. I read the comments. People thought I was stuck, or that I was being held back. But the truth is much more complicated than a magazine cover. For a long time, I was content. I loved being the big sister. I loved being the one everyone relied on. There is a safety in being needed. But as I watched Jill, then Jessa, then Jinger, and even my little brothers get married, the house started to feel different. The silence in the girls' room got louder. I remember turning 30 and thinking, okay, Lord, is this it? Is my ministry just to be the aunt? There were nights I cried into my pillow, wondering why my timeline looked so different. I had to learn that waiting isn't wasting. God was working on my heart, teaching me patience that I would need for the future. I wasn't left behind, I was just being saved for something specific. If you want to know where I spent my 20s, don't look in the kitchen. Look in the garden. That was my sanctuary. When the noise of the big house got to be too much, when the cameras were rolling and the babies were crying and the phones were ringing, I would go outside to my greenhouse. There is something spiritual about getting your hands in the dirt. I talked to God there more than I ever did in church. I planted seeds and watched them grow, and it reminded me that seasons change. Winter doesn't last forever. I remember planting a row of hydrangeas one spring, thinking, maybe by the time these bloom, I'll have someone to share them with. It took a few seasons of blooms, but eventually the winter did end. I've known the Wissmann family for years. We ran in the same circles, saw each other at conferences. But Stephen, I never really saw him until I did. It wasn't a lightning bolt moment. It was a slow burn. We started talking more, just as friends at first. He would ask me about my projects, about my garden. He actually listened. He didn't treat me like Jana Duggar from TV. He treated me like a woman with her own thoughts and ideas. I remember one specific conversation where we were sitting on a porch swing just talking about the future, and I looked at him and thought, "Aw, it's you. It's been you. He is so steady. He is quiet but strong. He doesn't need to be the center of attention, and after a lifetime of living in a circus, his quiet was the most attractive thing in the world to me." Wad decided early on that we wanted our relationship to belong to us, not the world. My family has always lived so publicly, and I knew how quickly opinions and rumors could damage something fragile. So we kept it quiet. It was actually kind of thrilling. We would meet up with chaperones, of course, but we wouldn't post about it. We wrote letters, real, handwritten letters, because texts felt too casual. I remember hiding his letters in a box under my bed like a teenager. Those months of privacy allowed us to really know each other's hearts without the pressure of an audience. We talked about everything: faith, family, dreams, fears. By the time the world found out, we had already built a foundation that no headline could shake. The day Stephen asked me to marry him was the most peaceful day of my life. He didn't do a big flash mob or a camera crew stunt. He took me to a beautiful spot near his family's home in Nebraska, overlooking the fields at sunset. He just looked at me with those kind eyes and said, "Jana, I want to build a life with you. Will you be my wife?" There was no hesitation in my heart. I didn't feel nervous butterflies. I felt a deep, settling calm. It was the easiest yes I have ever said. When he put the ring on my finger, it felt heavy in a good way, like an anchor. I finally had my person. I wasn't just Jana the daughter anymore. I was going to be Jana the wife. Planning a wedding in your 30s is very different from planning one in your early 20s. I didn't want the spectacle. I didn't want thousands of guests. I wanted it to feel like us. We chose a classic, elegant style. I did a lot of the planning myself, with help from my mom and sisters, but I made sure every decision reflected Stephen and me. The flowers were from my garden, hydrangeas, of course. The dress was timeless, not trendy. I remember trying it on and looking in the mirror, and for the first time, I didn't see the old maid that people pitied. I saw a bride who had waited for God's best. It wasn't about the party. It was about the covenant we were about to make before God. The night before the wedding, I slept in the girls' room at the big house for the very last time. It was surreal. That room has held so many secrets, so many giggles, and so many tears over the years. Most of my sisters were gone, married with their own homes. It was just me and the younger girls, Johanna, Jennifer, Jordan, Josie. We stayed up late talking, just like old times. They asked me if I was scared to move away. I told them the truth, the yes, but good scared. I looked around at the bunk beds and the posters on the wall, and I realized I was saying goodbye to my childhood. I cried a little bit that night, mourning the end of an era, but knowing I couldn't stay in that room forever. Waking up on my wedding morning, the house was unusually quiet. The sun was just coming up over the Arkansas hills. I went down to the kitchen to get coffee, just like I had done thousands of mornings before. My mom was there. We didn't say much at first. She just hugged me, and she held on a little longer than usual. I think she knew that once I walked out that door in my dress, things would never be the same. I wasn't her helper anymore. I was leaving her nest. There was a sweetness to that morning, a stillness before the storm of the day. I took a mental picture of the kitchen, the table where we all ate, the chore chart on the wall. I wanted to remember it exactly as it was because I knew I wasn't coming back to this life. Walking down that aisle felt like walking through a timeline of my life. I saw the faces of friends who had prayed for me, my siblings who I had helped raise, and my parents. But at the end of it all, there was Stephen. When I reached him, the nervousness just vanished. We didn't write long, flowery vows for the show. We spoke from our hearts. Promising to love and cherish him wasn't just words, it was a relief. I felt like I was finally putting down a heavy backpack I had been carrying for years. When the pastor said, "I now pronounce you husband and wife," and Stephen kissed me, the whole room erupted. It wasn't just a wedding. It felt like a victory celebration. I was finally, officially, a Wissmann. The days after the wedding were a whirlwind of packing. How do you fit 34 years of life into a moving truck? I had so much stuff. My gardening tools, my painting supplies, boxes of letters, and memories from growing up in a house with 20 people. Each box felt like a chapter closing. I found notes from when the twins were babies, drawings from the little girls. It was emotional. My sisters came over to help, and we laughed and cried as we sorted through clothes. "Do you really need this shirt from 2010, Jana?" Jessa asked me. Probably not, but letting go of physical things was harder than I thought. It meant admitting that I really wasn't going to live here anymore. I was packing up Jana the daughter to make room for Jana the wife. The hardest moment was the actual goodbye. standing in the driveway of the big house, hugging my parents. My dad, who has always been so strong, looked a little teary. My mom held me tight and whispered, "We are so proud of you." I hugged my little sisters, Johanna, Jennifer, Jordan, Josie, and promised I would FaceTime every day. Getting into Stephen's truck felt momentous. As we drove down that long, winding driveway for the last time as a resident, I looked back in the side mirror. I saw them waving until they were just little specks. I cried for about the first hour of the drive. It was happy tears, sad tears, relief tears, all mixed together. I was leaving the only world I had ever known. The drive to Nebraska is long, but it gave me time to think. Watching the landscape change from the hills of Arkansas to the flat, open plains of the Midwest felt symbolic. The sky seemed to get bigger the further north we drove. Stephen held my hand across the center console the whole way. We listened to music. We talked about how we would arrange the furniture, and we just enjoyed the silence of being alone together. Every mile marker was putting distance between my past and my future. By the time we crossed the state line into Nebraska, the tears had dried up, and I just felt excitement. I looked at Stephen and thought, okay, this is real. We are really doing this. Pulling up to our house for the first time as a married couple, I will never forget that feeling. It's a beautiful, white farmhouse surrounded by fields. It's quiet, so quiet compared to the highway noise near the big house. Stephen stopped the truck, ran around to my side, and, classic Stephen, he actually picked me up and carried me over the threshold. We walked into the living room, which was still full of boxes from his bachelor days and my new stuff. It wasn't perfectly decorated yet. It smelled like fresh paint and cedar, but it was ours. No cameras, no producers, no siblings running down the hall. Just us. I stood in the middle of the kitchen and took a deep breath. I was finally home. I woke up that first morning in Nebraska, and for a second, I panicked. It was so quiet. I lay there waiting for a baby to cry, or for a door to slam, or for someone to yell, "Jana, where are my shoes?" But there was nothing. Just the sound of the wind outside and Stephen breathing next to me. I tiptoed out to the kitchen, old habits die hard, and started making coffee. Standing there in the silence, watching the steam rise from the mug, I realized I didn't have to rush. I didn't have a schedule to keep for 10 other people. It was the first time in my life I could just exist. I sat on the porch swing and watched the sunrise, and I felt my shoulders drop about 3 inches. It was weird but wonderful. Okay, confession time. I do not know how to cook for 2 people. I grew up cooking in army-sized quantities. If a recipe called for 3 eggs, I used 3 dozen. So the first week, I made a tater tot casserole that could have fed the entire town of Lincoln. Stephen came home, looked at the mountain of food, and just started laughing. He said, "Well, I guess we have leftovers for the next month." Learning to scale down has been a funny challenge, but there is something so sweet about sitting across the table from just him. We pray together, we talk about his day, and we don't have to shout to be heard. I'm learning that marriage is in those quiet little moments, passing the salt, doing the dishes together, just being a team. I'd be lying if I said I didn't cry sometimes. About 2 weeks in, the adrenaline wore off, and the homesickness hit me like a wave. I missed the chaos. I missed my garden. I missed holding my nieces and nephews. I called Jessa and Joy constantly. Seeing their kids growing up through a screen is hard. One day, little Ivy asked me, "Aunt Jana, when are you coming home?" And my heart just broke. I had to remind myself that this is home now. It's a transition. You can be happy and sad at the same time. Stephen is so patient with me when I get weepy. He just holds me and lets me talk about them until I feel better. One thing that helped me settle in was getting to work on the house. Stephen bought this place knowing it needed some love, and lucky for him, he married a girl who loves a project. We decided to renovate the kitchen together. It was our first big project as a married couple. We picked out paint colors. I went with a soft sage green, of course. We sanded cabinets. We laid new tile. There were moments of frustration, sure, but mostly we just had fun. Watching him work with his hands, well, let's just say I didn't mind that view. Slowly, room by room, this bachelor pad started to feel like our home. Putting my own touches on the walls made me feel like I truly belonged here. I waited a long time for a husband, and I had a specific list of things I wanted. But Stephen is better than my list. He is so different from the loud, boisterous men I grew up around. He is a quiet strength. He serves me. He notices when I'm tired and does the laundry without being asked. He asks for my opinion on everything. He values my mind. I spent so many years taking care of everyone else, making sure everyone else was happy. To have someone look at me and say, "Jana, what do you need?" is a gift I can't even describe. He is healing parts of my heart I didn't even know were tired. For 34 years, I was Jana Duggar. That name came with a lot of expectations. It meant skirts, side hugs, and reality TV cameras. But moving here, changing my name on my driver's license to Wissmann, it felt like taking a deep breath. Here in Nebraska, I can just be Jana. I can go to the grocery store in jeans. Yes, jeans. And no one stops me for an autograph. I can have a bad hair day without it being on a tabloid cover. I'm discovering who I am outside of the Duggar brand. I'm finding out that I love quiet mornings. I love reading books just for fun. I love being Stephen's wife more than I ever loved being a TV star. I'm not just the stay-at-home daughter anymore. I am a woman building her own home, and that freedom is the most beautiful thing I have ever worn. People ask me, what's next? Are you going to have babies? Are you going to start a YouTube channel? And for the first time in my life, I don't have a plan, and I'm okay with that. We would love to have a family if the Lord blesses us. A little farmhouse filled with muddy boots and laughter sounds pretty perfect to me. But right now, I'm just enjoying this season of oos. I spent so many years waiting for my life to start, and now that it's here, I want to savor every second of it. I'm planting a new garden here, literal and metaphorical. I don't know exactly what will bloom, but I know the soil is good. Thank you for waiting with me. Thank you for praying for me. My story isn't over, it's just finally, truly beginning.